Welcome to the Pachehra Talks. Today we are going to talk about Azure storage. To be precise, we are going to secure Azure storage. This is security specialist playlist. So we are focusing on security aspect of the services. So it's time to secure Azure storage account. And before we start talking about security, let's just refresh our memory around this Azure storage. Okay. So if we need to define what is Azure storage. We define it like it's a cloud storage solution. Okay. It offers scalable, durable, and highly available storage service. As the name says, storage. So we dump data here. Now, data could be of any forms, right? And accordingly, we can opt for the respective service because it supports various types of data storage needs, including unstructured data, NoSQL database, and file storage, along with queues as well. So Azure Storage is designed to be flexible, allowing business to store and manage wide range of data types. Okay, let's understand them one by one. So we need to go through some key concepts. We'll not deep dive it because it's the video for the security, but we need to refresh our memory regarding the Azure storage and some updates which came down the lane. So key concept. So let's storage account, right? All right, so this storage account, the fundamental building block for all Azure storage services. A storage account provides a unique namespace for your data in Azure. All storage services are accessed through a storage account. Okay, so whenever we need to have blob files, queue tables, or any such service which is offered by Azure Storage, we first need to create a kind of namespace, a unique namespace in small letters, uh, because it is accessible globally. You have the control though. So it's a unique namespace. First, you create that storage account, and then inside it, you can opt for any other services. So that is storage account. So the very first service is blobs, which is binary large objects used for storing large amount of unstructured data. Unstructured data, okay, such as text or binary data. Then we have another concept of files. Okay, so it provides fully managed file shares in the cloud that are accessible through SMB protocol. Okay, then we have queues. Queues offers message message queuing for communication between components of distributed applications, just like we have service bus, but it has their own pros and cons and own features. So queue is also the service which is offered by Azure Storage. Then we have called tables, like key value. It provides NoSQL key value store for structured data. Key value, okay. It's a messaging queuing. All right, and whenever we create disk backend, it's there in the Azure storage account. Even if you use Azure pricing calculator, it is there in the storage account. So used to provide persistent storage for Azure virtual machines, disks. Nowadays it's managed, so you don't see that, but it is a part of storage. Okay. Now, these are the some key concept of Azure storage. Just to refresh our memory before we start talking about all the key concepts of security aspect of Azure storage account. And let's go through some wonderful features provided by Azure storage account. So the very first is scalability. As we defined at the beginning, Azure Storage is a cloud storage solution, offers scalable, durable, and highly available storage service. So these are the features: scalability. It can handle a massive amount of data and can scale up or down as required. Okay, you need not to select the size, you just need to create storage account and start dropping data there, or start using that. Then durability. Data is automatically replicated to ensure durability and high availability. Okay, then security aspect that will go through deep dive, but here it supports encryption, access control, advanced security features like SaaS and HTTPS, other stuff. There's so many things. We'll talk about it one by one in our main agenda of the video. Then global accessibility. Okay, access, because it is accessible from anywhere in the world through HTTP, HTTPS, or REST APIs. So that is another wonderful feature. Then integration, because it is a native service, so it integrates seamlessly with other Azure services and can be accessed through APIs, SDKs, or Azure CLI. And the last is cost effective, which is something that everybody look forward. So it offers multiple pricing tiers to meet different business needs, and also have lifecycle management for the data, which helps you minimize the cost and takes care of your data. All right, so these are some wonderful features provided by Azure Storage. All right, now we can also talk about some uh, use cases for these services so that we can understand when to use those services and what is the use case. All right, so let's start with these services that we talked about one by one. The very first is Azure Blob Storage. Okay, so it is designed for storing large amounts of unstructured data such as text and binary. We already talked about it. It is optimized for storing massive amounts of data and is accessible through HTTP, HTTPS from anywhere in the world. So, what are the features we get when we opt for this? The very first thing is different access tiers. Okay, for cost management. What are these access tiers? Like hot, cool, and an archive. Hot, where you have frequently accessed data, right? And archive, where we don't want to access it so frequently, like once a year, things like that. And cool, where you are not accessing data so frequently, but you would like to access the data. All right. So we are not getting into this administrative part of it. If you would like to know, you can check that video. You'll find it on this channel as well. But we are just refreshing our memories so that when we talk about the security aspect of it, we can easily relate it rather than thinking what was that. So another thing is life cycle management that I was talking. Because of the access tiers like hot, cool, and archive tier, we can automatically move data to the appropriate access tiers at a certain period of time. So that is lifecycle management offered by Azure Blob Storage. Then soft delete, which means recover deleted blobs within a specific retention period. You can opt for that service as well, which is going to be deprecated if I'm not wrong. We received some emails recently. Then snapshots means create read-only versions of the blobs for backups. Yes, you can take the backups of blob storage. So these are some wonderful features of Azure Blob Storage. Now quickly see some use cases for this particular service. Okay, because we have multiple services in the Azure storage. Why or when only use this blob? The very first thing is storing unstructured data. Okay, ideal for storing files, image, videos, and backups. All right, then data lakes. Yeah, data lake is already built on Azure Storage V2, using for big data analytics and data warehousing, which has hierarchical structure. Okay, then we have content distribution. delivering media content to user worldwide. We can also use it to run our static website. That's a different thing. But for now, that's all about it. Okay. So that is Azure Blob Storage. Now, what is the second service that we should talk about? Second service is Azure File Storage. All right. So Azure File provides managed file share in the cloud, accessible through the SMB protocol or REST API. So what are the feature it offers? SMB and NFS support. Yes, NFS support. So it exists through industry standard file protocols. You could utilize any of these accordingly as per your need. Then file sync. It offers file sync, means synchronize on-premises file server with Azure files. You can back on-premise server file server with the Azure file. It has multiple other features like tiering and all, and you can have multiple file shares synced through this cloud endpoint like file sync. Then again, you have that snapshot thing here. You can take point in time backup of file shares. That will help. Then we should go through some use cases like lift and shift apps. So when we are going to use it, when we are planning, this is one of the best use case or common use case when you're migrating legacy application that rely on file shares. You can simply start using Azure files when you're migrating your legacy application to Azure. Uh, think about shared storage. You can opt for this, providing shared storage for applications running in Azure or on premises, or multiple apps on Azure or VMs on Azure, just like any other share, file share. Then backup and DR, storing backups and ensuring data is accessible during disasters. You can also use this Azure files for the backups. All right. Then we have Azure Queue Storage. All right. Queue Storage provides messaging, queuing for asynchronous communication between application components. So it offers features like decoupling components, helps decouple application components to improve scalability and reliability, because you're not going to lose the data. It will stay there in the queue, and as soon as the availability, it will go and serve its purpose. Then message TTL means we can configure TTL for the message time to live. It is also there, just not like simple storage, but yeah, it has that feature as well. So you can use this Azure Queue Storage in this particular scenario, like queue messaging for background processing task, or you could say task schedule. You could also use this as inter-service communication, facilitate communication between different services or microservices. That's what the queue is actually doing, uh, decoupling the application. So inter-service communication, we can say, right? And of course, it smooth out heavy workloads by buffering request. So load leveling, okay? And you will not miss your data. It will be there, right? So these are some wonderful use cases for this particular service, Azure File and Azure Queue. Now let's talk about which one is left. Azure Table Storage. Okay, Azure Table Storage. All right, so table storage offers key value NoSQL store for semi-structured data, providing fast and scalable storage for large data sets. So the features like schemaless design, store data without predefined schema is a wonderful feature it offers, because NoSQL kind of data it's going to store, help you store, so schemaless. And fast access, optimized for fast read and write operations. Table storage, right? Scalability automatically scales to handle large volume of data, right? And if you think about the use cases, you can simply think for log data, efficiently storing and querying the log data. Okay. You can think for user data, storing user profile information for a web application, right? You can think for IoT data storage, storing large volumes of telemetry data from IoT devices. It's a key value, usually like JSON kind of structure, right? So that is all about table storage feature and the use cases. Now, the last one is Azure Disk Storage. All right, so disk storage provides persistent storage for virtual machines, offering high performance and low latency. It has the managed disk. You could simply say simplifies disk management with a scalable, high availability storage. You're not going to manage the storage account. That's why it's managed disk. And you have the disk types. You could say HDD standard SSD, premium SSD for different performance needs, and the cost goes as per the uh, performance-oriented disk you use. For example, premium SSD is expensive than standard HDD. And then the snapshot, it offers snapshots. Yes, you could snapshot it and use it for keeping the backup or use it to migrate it, things like that. Use cases, we need to think about the use cases providing durable storage for VMs running critical workloads. So it's a VM disk, right? So we could say persistent VM storage. Okay. It can also be used for the database storage. So storing data for database that requires high IOPS and low latency, and application storage, supporting applications that need reliable and high performance storage. So these are some wonderful use cases for this particular service. All right, so I think we are good with refreshed our memory regarding the Azure storage account. So if we need to conclude it, we can conclude by saying Azure storage offers a comprehensive suite of services designed to meet a wide range of storage needs. Whether you need to store unstructured data, manage file shares, handle large volumes of messages, store semi-structured data, or provide persistent storage for VMs, Azure provides scalable, durable, and secure solution. By leveraging these services, business can effectively manage their data and drive operational efficiency. So let's go to the main topic for this video, which is storing. Let's store, not storing, but the securing. Okay. I was just checking if you guys are still with me or already left. So let's secure or find ways to secure Azure storage account. Okay. So we need to secure it. All right. So there are multiple facets that we should usually go with. The very first thing that we need to talk about is data encryption. Okay. Then the second is network security. Okay. Third is the IAM. I am in the respect of both. Somebody has to create it, manage it, somebody is accessing it, right? So it is there under IAM. Then we have monitoring and logging. We should know what is happening around. Then, of course, data protection and recovery. Okay. And finally, sixth point is compliance and governance. Now we need to explore all these topics, uh, which will help us to understand the security aspect of Azure storage account. So the very first is data encryption. So very first is data encryption. All right. To ensure the data is protected from unauthorized access, both at rest and in transit, we need to encrypt it. Now, the encryption at rest and encryption in transit. There are two types of encryption. So let's talk about at rest first. Azure Storage encrypts data at rest using 256 bit AES encryption. Okay, one of the strongest block ciphers available. Now we have three kinds of encryption here: server side, customer managed key, and double encryption. Three things that we should understand under this particular topic. One is SSE, which is server side encryption, means automatically encrypts data before storing it and decrypts it when accessed. By default, it is there. All right. Now you could utilize customer managed keys for that kind of functionality, that kind of encryption and decryption. So allow you to manage your own encryption keys using Azure Keyword. So you could use CMK or customer managed key. We also provide an additional layer of security by encrypting data twice using different encryption algorithm or keys. So it also offers double encryption. Okay. Now encryption in transit. Encryption in transit. This is the second that we should understand. At rest and transit, so uses TLS to encrypt data as it travels to and from Azure storage account. So you can go ahead and make HTTPS mandatory. Ensure all connections to Azure storage uses HTTPS to encrypt data in transit. Then we have SMB 3.0 encryption. You can easily understand because we said SMB, this is for Azure files, which supports SMB 3.0, which includes encryption. All right, so this is the fast data encryption. So these are the few highlights for data encryption that we should be aware of. Now it's time to understand the network security. Under network security, to restrict access to storage account and ensure data is accessed only by the authorized networks. So the very first thing is VNet integration. We can have VNet integration, which means restricts access to storage account to specific virtual network using private endpoints. You could also use service endpoints and use policies. So we got two kinds of endpoints here to integrate with the virtual network. Service endpoint, which extend your VNet to include Azure storage. Private endpoint provides a private IP address in your virtual network for your storage account, ensuring traffic remains within your Azure backbone network. Then, so we should mention private endpoint and service endpoint for the integration. Now we also have firewalls. Configure network rules to allow or deny traffic for specific IP address, IP range, or subnets. It's a network firewall on the service itself. All right, so you could utilize that particular feature, which can also help you to shut it down for public access or opening for only allowed IP addresses or subnets. So that is network security aspect of it. Now let's go through the IAM, which is identity and access management. So to control who can access your storage account and what they can do with the data, first of all, provide RBAC because it is Azure service. You can simply use all the users in your AD to apply RBAC, assign roles to users, groups, or applications to control access to your storage account. We're talking about the control plane here, right? So use Azure AD, go with RBAC for the management. Use managed identities since we talked management. So managed identities, which means automatically managed identities of Azure services, simplifying identity management whenever the service is talking to some other Azure services. Okay. Now you could also utilize in identity access management, we have SaaS, which is shared access signature, provides delegated access to storage resources with specific permissions and time constraint. We also have access keys. if which is not recommended, but if you are using access keys, you keep on rotate it and use keywords for such scenarios. Okay, so that is IAM situation, or IAM multiple ways of securing your IAM. Then we have monitoring and logging. So to track access and modifications to your storage resources, detect any unauthorized activities, you should always go to Azure Monitor. Okay. Collect and analyze telemetry data to monitor the performance and usage of your storage account. It also has metrics and logs, like enable diagnostic logging to track read, write, and delete operations. We already talked about, just like any other Azure service where we enable the diagnostic, we can enable the diagnostic here as well and keep them into the storage account or event hub as per the requirement. Then we provide this MS Defender for Cloud provides unified security management and advanced threat protection across your Azure resources. So you could also utilize the recommendation of MS Defender. All right. Then we have one more thing, which is data network IAM monitoring, data protection and recovery. Let's talk about data protection and recovery. Now, to ensure data is protected against accidental deletion or corruption and can be recovered when needed, we have options like, we already talked about it, soft delete, which allows you to recover delete blobs or files within a specified retention period. We also have snapshots for recovery, so create point in time backups of blobs or files for data recovery. All right. Now, if we need to talk about compliance and governance, okay, compliance and governance. So, to ensure that your storage account complies with organizational and regulatory requirements, we can simply use Azure Policy, which is the main tool for the governance in Azure. Azure Policy, which enforce organizational standards and assess compliance at scale. We have built-in policies, so you could utilize built-in policies to enforce security and compliance settings for storage account. You can also create the custom as per your need. We have something called Azure Blueprints, which define repeatable sets of Azure resources that implement and adhere to standards, patterns, and requirements. So we can write here Azure Blueprint as well. Okay. Now, if we need to think for a broader security aspect, put it here so that it will be in your eyes and you can keep refreshing or reminding yourself the things that we have studied till now. So, when securing Azure storage as a part of overall architecture, because Azure storage is not the single service that we are going to use, we are going to use entire environment. We need to secure the entire environment, and Azure storage is one of the part of the environment, right? Even if you are securing an application, Azure storage maybe application is using to store static content or maybe for logging or for things like that, right? So it's a small service or resource which is a part of a big environment or infrastructure that we need to secure. So we need to think from the broader perspective of securing the Azure storage as a part of an overall architecture. So we can think about certain things, like we have already covered zero trust architecture, so you can think from that perspective as well, like adopt a zero trust approach where you continuously verify every access request and enforce strict access control. So zero trust is based on three principles, right? Verify explicitly. All right, least privilege and last radius. So you can keep these three things in your mind and try to secure it. Like, whosoever is accessing your environment, because request is not coming directly to the storage account, maybe coming from the application, coming from the users outside, coming from anywhere in the world, all right, in your environment. So you should verify with all the data points that you have that the request is genuine, request is authenticated and authorized. Only then you go ahead and let them access the files on the storage. And least privilege, whenever you apply access policies for somebody who is administering, like RBAC, or somebody is accessing from outside, it should not have something like download but to read. So least privilege should be there. And simultaneously the blast radius, if something happens, it will not go somewhere else, it will not do the lateral movement, it will stuck there. Okay, so you can think from that perspective as well. Then we also have something called defense in depth, which is again part of a broader zero trust architecture as well, because you need to apply defenses on every layer. So implement multiple layers of security, including network security, IAM, encryption, monitoring to protect your storage resources, just like we talked about here. These are the things, right? So we can simply say all these are the layers, right? These all are the layers: data layer, network layer, IAM layer, monitoring, logging, uh, compliance, governance. These all are the different layers. You can have these layers like here. Okay, so we that's how we actually studied all till now in all the security videos. We are securing each and every layer that come across whenever we use that service, whenever we uh, let others use that service. Okay, now we also have something that we should keep in mind, which is very important, and it's a part of your environment always. Doesn't matter whether it's storage or something else, which is regular audits and assessments. So we need to conduct regular security audits and compliance assessment to identify and mitigate vulnerabilities. So security is not a one-time static thing. It's a key ongoing. Every day you need to make sure your environment is secure. So you need to keep on checking the MS Defender for cloud for all those recommendations, and you keep on auditing and assessing your environment if it is secure. Okay. If you have a proper lockdown and the proper DevOps practices in place, like you're using infrastructure as code and not touching anything, anybody, there is no snowflakes, it would be easy for you. But to come to that practice, it will be a challenge, but a challenge that will give you a lot of value. Okay, now that's all about securing Azure storage, which involves multiple layers, right? Your encryption, network, IAM, monitoring, data, compliance. So, by integrating these security measures into your broader architecture and following best practices, we can ensure that our data is protected from unauthorized access and threats. This multi-layer approach provides robust security for our storage resources, helping you maintain a secure and compliant environment. Well, I know this is not a deep dive video on each and every security practices, but maybe we'll create those later in upcoming videos. But this is broadly just to understand the refresh the memory on the storage account, and then multiple ways to secure it as per the broader aspect of the cloud architecture. Well, I hope it was informative and you guys enjoyed it, liked it. Thank you for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day. Bye bye.